He declared war on the entire tabloid press, a war his family has no wish to fight. And tonight, confirmation that one of Prince Harry's key battles against the Mirror over hacking will begin the day after his father's coronation weekend. It certainly won't endear him to his family, and it raises the stakes yet again in his war with the press. Rebecca has the details. Also on News at 10 tonight. It may have my name on it, but it was not in my name. The Home Secretary under pressure over an email on asylum as the Tory party tries to turn its guns on Gary Lineker. It is about to get worse, perhaps a lot worse. More snow warnings tonight. Echoes of Ukraine. Now another neighbour of Russia, Georgia, is beset by massive protests. Could it be Ron, the man hoping to beat Donald Trump to the Republican nomination? And
you know who it is.
The world according to Luther.
The interesting thing about Luther land is that it's not landlocked.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Prince Harry has never been exactly shy about sharing his feelings on the media and how certain parts of it, in his view, seem to operate purely for profit at the expense of everything and everyone else. And tonight we've learned he's to take centre stage at the next big trial of a tabloid publisher over phone hacking allegations. The Duke of Sussex is one of a number of high-profile figures bringing damages claims against Mirror Group newspapers over alleged unlawful information gathering. And with awkward timing, the trial is due to start the day after the King's coronation bank holiday. Should be popular with his family, who, of course, very much do not want a war with the press. So will Harry be here for the coronation? Could it mean he'll give evidence in person at the trial? We don't yet know, but one thing is certain. Despite quitting the royal family and living half a world away in California, there's as yet no risk of Prince Harry being forgotten back home.
Prince Harry has made clear the disgust he feels towards British tabloids. Now he's set to take his fight to the High Court in a case against Mirror Group newspapers.
We're talking about an antagonist, which is the British press.
He's laid bare the trauma press intrusion has caused. Now the Duke of Sussex could take to the witness stand in court to give evidence on oath. It's claimed 148 articles published by Mirror Group newspapers about Prince Harry over a 14-year period between 1996 and 2010 included information allegedly obtained through unlawful means, including phone hacking, blagging of itemised phone bills and flight information. Other celebrities involved in the case include the former Girls Aloud singer Cheryl Cole, the estate of the late George Michael, ex-footballer Ian Wright and actor Ricky Tomlinson. It's more than a decade since phone hacking on an industrial scale led to the closure of rival tabloid The News of the World. There was even a criminal trial in which its former editor was jailed. But while the publisher of the Mirror, the Sunday People, has paid out more than £100 million settling claims, the Mirror's former editor, Piers Morgan, has always strongly denied any knowledge of phone hacking.
OK, I'm done with this. No.
His very public row with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex led to his departure from ITV.
Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored.
In his show tonight, he didn't refer to the case. Now a new conflict will be played out in the courts.
My job is to keep my family safe. It is my duty to uncover this exploitation and bribery that happens within our media.
Harry said the toxic British press drove him from the royal family and the UK. Now he could be returning to fulfil what he now sees as his duty.
Rebecca is here to talk about all this. Look, we know he doesn't like the press, but what's at stake here?
Well, I think if this trial goes ahead as planned, it could be explosive. I mean, not least for the royal family. This trial is due to start on the 9th of May, just 3 days after the coronation of King Charles, but also because of the allegations themselves. They're potentially so damaging. It's alleged that Mirror Group newspapers were unlawfully gathering information about the young prince from before his mother died right up until just before the start of the Leveson inquiry. And of course, Prince Harry is the headliner of this case, but lawyers will also detail lots of other cases of alleged illegal behaviour, things like a blagging of medical records, tapping of landlines and obtaining bank details by deception. If Mirror Group newspapers lose this case, it could open the floodgates for further claims. We know they've already paid out more than £100 million to settle other claims. Some estimate the real figure could be double that. So just how much more can they afford, and at what cost to their reputation? We did approach both Piers Morgan and the publisher of MGN for comment, but we didn't hear back. One final point, this is not the only case that Prince Harry is bringing against the tabloids. There's another hearing at the end of this month against associated newspapers. That's the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday.
OK, for now, Rebecca, thank you very much indeed. Now, there's a growing list tonight of people the government is accusing of blocking its efforts to stop asylum seekers reaching Britain in small boats. There's Labour, of course, and a string of charities and legal experts who believe the new illegal migration bill will be unworkable, if not itself illegal. At one point today, the Home Secretary even appeared to blame civil servants, although Suella Braverman later denied writing the email that bore her name. Strangest of all, perhaps, maybe the row Downing Street has got itself into with the football presenter Gary Lineker. I think it's fair to say he didn't like the government's language, and they certainly did not like his.
Overseeing a kickabout in Downing Street today, the Prime Minister announced extra funding for girls' sports. But while future footballers went through their paces here, a former player was joining in the criticism of the new immigration policy. A policy the Labour leader said offered nothing new.
This is their 5th Prime Minister, their 6th immigration plan, their 7th Home Secretary, and after all this time, all they offer is the same old gimmicks and empty promises.
He voted against measures to deport foreign criminals, Mr. Speaker, and he even argued against deportation flights. Well, and we know why, because on this matter, he talked about his legal background. He's just another lefty lawyer standing in our way.
Blaming lefty lawyers is one thing, but a Tory party email under the Home Secretary's name went further, saying an activist blob of left-wing lawyers, civil servants and the Labour Party had blocked their immigration policy. Accusing civil servants of blocking policy is a serious matter, but tonight Suella Braverman said the email hadn't really been from her at all.
I didn't write that email, I didn't see it, and it was an error, really.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with the sentiment?
I'm incredibly grateful to the civil servants at the Home Office with whom I'm working to stop the boats, to keep the British people safe.
By contrast, Gary Lineker is very much taking responsibility for communications about immigration in his name. The BBC presenter wrote, "This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people, in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. The comments have hit a nerve.
To compare that to the actions of the Nazis in 1930s Germany is completely wrong and inappropriate. We believe that we're acting on behalf of the British public and that the broad majority of people would agree with what we're trying to do here."
The BBC said they'd have a frank conversation with their highest paid star, although a former teammate told us Lineker was encouraged to take a stance on human rights elsewhere.
I agree 100% with Gary, but the BBC stance for me is a little bit strange because, of course, even Gary himself in the World Cup in Qatar and their stance on human rights abuses, be it LGBT or workers' rights in Qatar, which wasn't particularly impartial, and the BBC, of course, encouraged that.
This afternoon, Gary Lineker said he would continue to speak up for those who have no voice. Carl Dinner, News at 10, Westminster.
And you can see Robert Peston's full interview with Suella Braverman on his programme in just a few minutes, straight after the news. Should be well worth watching. Now, there have been echoes of Ukraine in events taking place in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia this week. Russia appears to have been exerting pressure on the Georgian government, trying to keep it within Moscow's sphere of influence. But as in Ukraine almost 20 years ago, thousands have come out in protest. Georgia is a country sandwiched between Russia to the north and Turkey to the south. It was a Soviet state, of course, until it secured independence in 1991. But in 2008, Russian forces occupied two regions, South Ossetia and Abkhazia. For a time, Tbilisi was pursuing NATO and EU membership, but the current government has been more sympathetic to Moscow. Now a proposed new law has prompted protests.
For a man who wanted to expand Russian influence to former Soviet republics like Georgia, the pictures of another night of anti-Moscow demonstrations will pile more pressure on Vladimir Putin. What will rile him even more than these kind of placards is seeing tens of thousands of Georgians passionately holding up the European flag and other pro-Western signs.
The victory is just around the corner, and I'm sure this much people, very different group of society, gathered together in order to save the future of Georgia.
The spark that lit this fuse of protests is the Georgian government's planned introduction of a law similar to what Vladimir Putin introduced in Russia. It aims to limit aid from EU, US and other Western donors to independent media and aid organizations. It's denounced by protesters in the Georgian capital as Russia's law. Addressing the protesters back home as she visited New York, Georgia's president denounced the law introduced by the Prime Minister. "Behind me is the Statue of Liberty," she said, a symbol that Georgia has fought for. "I stand beside you. Georgia sees its future in Europe," she said defiantly, "and no one will deprive you of your future." But just as in previous nights, this evening's vigils turned violent in the last few hours. Protesters began to clash with security forces in the area around the Georgian parliament, where they'd gathered. Tonight, the rioting against the new Russia law has continued, with opposition leaders saying every day will be like this. 2 decades ago, Vladimir Putin sent his soldiers into Georgia to quell pro-Western sentiment. Since Ukraine, he simply does not have that power, and many Georgians have much less fear of him. Raggy Omar, News at 10.
Back here, the reward offered in the hunt for those who gunned down a police officer in Northern Ireland was significantly increased today. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times last month after coaching children playing football and remains critical but stable in hospital. $150,000 is now being offered to bring those behind the attack to justice. Police have previously said they were focusing their inquiry on dissident Republicans. As many of you will know all too well, there was snow across much of the country today, causing disruption for some, though most people appear to have weathered the storm safely. But that may be about to change. The Met Office says there is worse to come. Yellow warnings are in place in large parts of England and most of Wales, as well as northern parts of Scotland, where a third day of bad weather has forced school closures. But tomorrow, that yellow warning expands, and in central and northern England, roughly from Stoke to Durham, there's a more severe amber warning, with areas like the Pennines told to expect strong winds and blizzard conditions and up to 40 centimetres of snow. Today's weather gave a foretaste of that up and down the country.
Just as March arrived, so too did the difficult driving conditions. Lorries were going nowhere on the A3 in Surrey. Freezing temperatures and snow flurries caused disruption through much of this morning. Snowplows were brought in to get planes moving again at Bristol Airport, which had to close temporarily because of the terrible conditions. In Wales, the farmers were hoping things were going to warm up. Instead, they're lambing in the coldest conditions.
It is extremes. We've had that extreme drought, and then we've had such a dry winter, and now you do start to think, my word, when are we going to come out of this, and how long is this going to last?
Inevitably, schools in all 4 nations took the decision to close, giving many children the opportunity to enjoy the weather, some for the first time.
It's been fun, just been playing in the snow, and making the most of it, really.
It's the first snow of the year for me, for us, really, and we're excited.
And the weather only added to the prospect of a brisk walk up to the highest peak in the Brecon Beacons. Not as many people here today, but those that were taking extra care braving the elements. The Met Office says the Arctic air that's gusting across the UK, causing disruption, is sticking around. After the coldest March night recorded for 10 years, temperatures are expected to dip again, meaning already tricky driving conditions are likely to turn treacherous. National Highways has issued a severe weather alert for snow in the Midlands and east of England tonight, advising drivers to only travel if it's essential. Tomorrow, the threat will move to the north of England as well, where an amber weather warning is in place. As much as 40 centimetres of snow could fall in some places. A treat for those able to enjoy it safely, but almost certainly a hindrance to those travelling around over the next few days. Stacey Foster, News at 10.
Now, as you can see, as a form of torture, we've asked Sangeeta to stand outside in Leeds, where some of the heaviest snow is expected tomorrow. Sangeeta, look, rightly or wrongly, we do know we get a lot of trouble when we get heavy snowfall. So what can we expect to see there?
Well, believe it or not, Tom, it's going to get colder, and it's already cold right now. It's a bit calmer, actually, than it was a few hours ago. The snow's already reached Leeds. It's passed for now, but temperatures are going to drop. The gritters have already been out. They've been spreading salt on the roads and cycle paths this afternoon. They've stopped for now. These are the empty trucks. So what will happen is the lorries overnight will reverse into these, fill them with salt and head back out in the morning for what's expected to be heavy snowfall that'll cause disruption, not just to transport, but to phone networks and power lines as well. And earlier today, the UK Health Security Agency advised people to check in on elderly neighbours because of the increased risk to those who are vulnerable, and that amber weather warning is in place for about 3 o'clock tomorrow. At the moment, it's due to last until 12 o'clock Friday. So the advice is to not go out unless necessary, but certainly check before taking any long journeys.
OK, Sangeeta, let's hope everyone comes through it OK. Now, some call him Trump 2.0, a younger, potentially more electable right-wing American politician who's become Donald Trump's main rival for the Republican nomination for president. He is, of course, Ron DeSantis, just re-elected governor of Florida by a landslide, with policies including banning abortions after 6 weeks and allowing everyone to carry guns. He's not officially said he's running for president yet, but the hints are too strong to ignore. The subtitle of his new book is Florida's Blueprint for America. His book tour is conveniently taking him to the states he'd have to convince first, Iowa and New Hampshire. And in a speech to Florida legislators last night, he spoke mostly about how his ideas would apply nationally. He ended with a quote from Ronald Reagan, "You ain't seen nothing yet."
They say keeping your eye on the ball is the key to victory. But for retirees playing in this seniors softball game in Florida, there's plenty of other things on their minds, like which political big hitter to support as America starts to focus on a distant election. Most on this team are Republicans and face a difficult choice. Support their homegrown governor Ron DeSantis, or the Sunshine State's most famous guest, Donald Trump.
I think we can get to where Trump had us without all of the sideshow. We don't need the sideshow. That's why I'm voting for DeSantis.
We will stand strong. We will hold the line. You ain't seen nothing yet.
This week, Ron DeSantis set out more of his war on woke agenda at an annual address to Florida's lawmakers.
And we are proud to be pro-life in the state of Florida. Our schools must deliver a good education, not a political indoctrination. Florida is not a sanctuary state, and we will uphold the rule of law.
A poll 2 weeks ago put DeSantis 9 points ahead of Trump among Republican primary voters. Local Republican politicians here think Ron, not Don, has what it takes.
I give Donald Trump all the credit in the world for what he accomplished during his administration. I simply do not believe he's electable.
I wish former President Trump would be the kingmaker and not the king.
The subtitle of Ron DeSantis' book is Florida's Blueprint for America's Revival, and the speech he gave here felt very much like a campaign for the White House.
He is rallying his base, he's positioning, and this is actually not about Florida, this is all about his run for the United States of America.
DeSantis has made inroads in Latino areas like this in ways Donald Trump could only dream of. He won 57% of the Hispanic vote in the race to be governor, including significant numbers of Puerto Ricans who often lean to the Democrats.
One of the most popular cigars.
In the Tabanero cigar shop in Tampa,
we got the Churchills in here to go play golf.
Yanko Maceda shows me the business he built from nothing after coming here from Cuba. He supports Trump but concedes many Latino voters are switching to DeSantis.
He's a family man. He's a family man. And the things that he's been fighting for, I think a lot of Latinos, they have the same belief, same principles.
The queues at his book signings might be a sign of the magic ingredient in US presidential bids, momentum. No wonder his minders don't want any media inside to ask any awkward questions.
So there will be no video or photography of the event.
The lone protester here was heavily outnumbered by those who apparently think they're about to meet the next president of the United States. Not bad for a man who's yet to officially declare.
And Dan, as you can see, joins us. I mean, Dan, I guess you posed the question there. I mean, can he beat Donald Trump? I guess that's what everyone wants to know.
Well, I mean, this feels like the beginning of a sort of national campaign. He's not just promoting his book here in Florida. He's been to Arizona already. He's going to Nevada and to Iowa, all key states in the battle for the White House later this week. The polling, can he beat Donald Trump? Well, it's inconsistent. It's not clear. There was one poll that came out earlier this week from a respected company in the US, 538. Now, it was talking to all Americans, not just Republicans, but it found that 52% viewed Donald Trump unfavorably, whereas only 36% viewed Ron DeSantis unfavorably. That will give him a bit of a boost, but, you know, they are saying to me here in Florida, one of the reasons that people are switching from Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis is they feel they get the same political agenda, but without all of the baggage, without the political jeopardy, without the drama and the misogyny, and they feel that he could potentially deliver that all the way to the White House. They're running a very tight media ship here. He's not doing hardly any sit-downs with media, only really with people like Fox News. You know, when he does declare, if he does declare, he's going to have to not only face the press for a proper cross-examination, but he'll have to face the likes of Donald Trump in some of those debates as well. And that could get ugly fast.
OK, Dan. Let's see. For now, thank you very much. Back here, Britain's never-ending battle with obesity is well documented. So some were thrilled today when it was announced that a new weight loss drug, one that's been described as a game changer, will now be available on the NHS in England. But others were less pleased. The drug, called semaglutide, is also needed by diabetics, and its popularity has led to reports of shortages. And critics say even the drug's successes are temporary because it does nothing to stop people piling the pounds back on.
In 2019, Cherie was slim and happy. Eating and drinking during lockdown saw her weight tip her into the obese category.
It's just me, my personal confidence. I feel like my health, my mental health, everything would be perfect if it wasn't for my weight.
In an attempt to get her weight back to where it was, she's tried healthy eating and exercise and has now heard about a drug her friends have recommended.
I am wanting to try it just to even see if it helps me at all.
The drug is semaglutide, often known as Wegovy, an appetite suppressant popular with celebrities like Elon Musk and Kim Kardashian. Today, NICE ruled it's safe and, at £73 per month, is good value for NHS England to prescribe.
The clinical trials that we looked at showed that people having semaglutide alongside lifestyle interventions lost 12% more of their body weight than patients that were on placebo. So this is a real significant improvement in the care for these patients.
To be eligible, most patients will have to have a body mass index over
35, and a weight-related health condition like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure or heart disease. As well as being prescribed the drug, patients will also be supported by a dietitian and weight management services, though critics question whether they'll have the capacity. Another concern is what happens when the treatment ends. Prescriptions will be capped at 2 years.
The drug works by mimicking a naturally occurring hormone that's released from the gut when you've eaten a meal, and that helps you to feel full after you've eaten. If you take that away, then of course you're going to start to feel hungry again.
That was Yasmin's experience after coming off a drug called Ozempic, which contains the same active ingredient.
I was quite upset when the weight started to come back on. I was back to square one, having lost the weight and then put it back on.
Eating disorder charities are worried too about the message promoting weight loss drugs sends. Like Yasmin, they say the key to a lasting healthy relationship with food often requires mental support, along with lifestyle choices. Martin Stew, News at 10.
Some sport now, and England looks set to face France in their must-win Six Nations match this weekend without captain Owen Farrell. There are widespread reports tonight that coach Steve Borthwick plans to bench Farrell for the first time in 8 years following a run of bad form. Marcus Smith is expected to start in his place. And back to the subject of Prince Harry and Meghan. They have made clear their wish to distance themselves from the royal family and their reasons why. But today they made an at least symbolic move to keep their children within the fold. Announcing their daughter's christening in California, they referred to her for the first time as Princess Lilibet Diana. She and her brother are permitted to use the titles automatically as grandchildren of the king. And finally, Idris Elba's name has been linked with James Bond so often that it can be hard to imagine him not playing that iconic role. But it turns out it's quite easy for the man himself. He's got other priorities, he told us, including making more films as the character he originated, Luther, John Luther. And alongside that, he revealed his personal ambition to grow the film industry in African countries, where he says there are so many stories waiting to be told.
Mr. DCI John Luther, well, I mean, it's not. I was a DCI in your department.
There was a big-budget franchise with an open door, but Idris Elba's sticking with his crime-fighting character of John Luther.
He's a malignant narcissist. This is about prestige, power.
After a successful series run on TV, streamers Netflix backed a feature-length film. Idris hopes it's the first of many.
We've got this legacy of the show we've done for 10 years, and then the ambition of going and doing something that sort of, you know, is new, but keeps a new audience, but keeps the old audience. I think we envisioned this as a sort of like 3 to 4 book offering, you know. We did 5 seasons of the show, and we still felt like we could tell more stories. Who's this? You know who it is.
Luther's hunting a sadistic serial killer who preys on the idea that technology makes us vulnerable, and there's an innate desire to visualise our most sinister thoughts.
That desensitisation, I think, was the interesting thing about you know, what is it that when we drive along on the motorway and we see a car crash that we want to look? What is it about the dark side of humanity that keeps us interested?
We all pick up our phones and go, huh, you know, am I being hacked? You know what I mean? That's just part of our consciousness now, and I think that's what makes this storyline so, you know, relevant. There's a lot of African filmmaking, but the facilities around that are something that is lacking.
Idris has been using his industry know-how to encourage global filmmaking. Recently, he met with the presidents of Tanzania and Ghana to discuss building new movie studios.
Why is it so important that African countries are able to thrive as hubs for filmmaking?
For what I'm doing, as an actor, you know, I'm a link in a chain. I'm trying to build facilitation around it. Its stories have been undertold, mistold, and the narrative could do with a shift.
Would you ever take Luther?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing about Luther land is that it's not landlocked, and whether that is, you know, in London like it is in this film, or it ends up being in, you know, Mozambique. Hopefully I can take a storyline to Africa, why not?
Where is it? It's in the cupboard. While Luther, the Fallen Son, is out at the end of the week, Idris hopes his work on and off screen will help filmmakers for years to come. Rishi Davda, News at 10.
No. The great Idris Elba. That is, though, all we have time for tonight. So good night, and thank you very much for watching.